almost all of us are exposed to high levels of EMF, like radio frequency fields, electric fields, and magnetic fields. This is a recent phenomena, and this exposure is such a powerful negative influence on our health. Thankfully, there's some incredible experts out there that give simple, practical strategies and all the details you can use to implement to protect you and your family from the negative consequences of regular exposure to these fields.
What is our body perceiving now that we have all these modern exposures to these pulsating currents and voltages of electricity in a vastly different frequency range than we've ever been exposed to in the history of mankind? Calcium causes the muscle to contract, magnesium helps it to relax. And I think, there's some studies that actually show this too, but I think that one of the reasons that we're so magnesium deficient in our modern culture is because we've got this constant exposure to this alternating current that's got these micro contractions happening all night long, all day long in some instances with our muscles, and it's depleting us of our magnesium, which is trying to relax our muscles. So we've got this constant tension that's going on all the time. Your cortisol is going up, your melatonin's going down, and you're not getting that restorative detoxification of the brain and all the lymphatics detoxing optimally. We've come up with a priority system on where you need to definitely shield the most to get the most bang for your buck, and then also what to worry about and what not to worry about when it comes to your EMF exposures and what you can do when you are exposed. It's not natural, it's not something our ancestors were exposed to, and it's something that you need out of your life, at least while you're sleeping.
Welcome everyone, this is Dr. Mercola helping you take control of your health, and today we're going to answer your questions about EMF. So with me today is Brian Hoyer, who is one of the major consultants for my new book, and I'll let him describe his expertise, but in his training, but in my view, he's literally one of the leading, if not the leading expert in shielding in the United States. And I've connected with lots of experts in the field and have been somewhat disappointed, and we'll go into those in detail. But he has his own company called shieldedhealing.com, and he's in the process of training other experts like him who can use this knowledge to help you guide you and your family towards protecting yourselves from the dangers of EMF that I've been exposing for so long now. And I'm deeply appreciative of Brian's assistance in helping me compile the book to make sure it was accurate. And he's largely responsible for a large number of the recommendations we have in Chapter 7, which is how to protect yourself and your family. So welcome, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
So it might be best to, before we start answering the questions, to share your story of how you got interested in this and what your training experience is and how you've compiled it and how you continue to learn. Because one of the things that impresses me with your strategy is that unlike some other companies out there who do this, or not companies, but organizations, when a person they're consulting with continues to have problems, they don't really acknowledge them and utilize them as a tremendous biological meter or tool to help understand what's going on. But you're doing that. And as a result, the clients that you're taking care of, they're many times teaching you and forcing you to investigate more carefully and to think through this, which is such an unusual characteristic to have, at least in my experience. So many people just do their job and they're over, and like some of these organizations, and if you're still having problems, it's your problem, it's not theirs. So why don't you describe the process, because I think it's really intriguing.
Yeah, well, I approach this from more of a health practitioner standpoint, and my first training was really with the Nutritional Therapy Association. So I became a nutritional therapy practitioner, and I was seeing clients in California at the time, and took some continuing education up in Seattle with Dr. Klinghardt and the Klinghardt Academy, which I highly recommend if you're a health practitioner to dive into that.
Yeah, and if I can just insert here, I mean, your level of expertise has progressed so much. And Dr. Klinger, of course, for anyone who studied this field, is recognized as one of the leading experts in it. But you're so good at it now that he actually hired you to shield his office in Seattle.
Yeah, so I've been lucky enough on this journey to, advance fast and quickly enough to be able to offer what I consider to be the best options as far as following his protocols, and in what he believes is exactly what you need for his patients to heal. And he sees some of the most chronically ill patients in the world. They've seen like 20 doctors before they go to see him. And that was the thing in one of his lectures that really struck me in my practice was a lot of my clients that I was seeing, we'd have them on a leaky gut protocol or on this digestive protocol, or we would be on whatever protocol it might be. And they would need to stay on the supplementation for a really long time, or if they got off of it, the leaky gut would come back or the symptoms would come back. But as soon as I started implementing some of these EMF shielding techniques according to Dr. Klinghart's protocols, I saw vast improvements. People didn't even need the supplements anymore. They were just healing leaky gut by just sleeping in a shielded room every single night. And I kind of realized that, stepped back from that and said, well, what is going on here? And realized that, we talk so much in the natural health world about food and diet and exercise, and all of that's so important. And especially thinking about it from this ancestral perspective, what have our bodies evolved or been created to develop in, and what's the ancestral diet, what's the ancestral way of movement, and on all those sorts of things. But the question that hadn't been explored much is, what's the ancestral energetic environment? What is our body perceiving now that we have all these modern exposures to these pulsating currents and voltages of electricity in a vastly different frequency range than we've ever been exposed to in the history of mankind? And so approaching that whole gamut of energy from this more ancestral perspective, I realized, you know what, it's not only what we put into our body, but it's also what we put our body into in this environment that needs to change. And if we can mimic what the ancestral environment is, then what happens is I found out all these dormant healing responses just kind of wake up and the body starts to heal itself. And I've got some stories we'll probably get into a little bit later about customers who, after shielding, they've had some amazing recoveries. And the body just knows what to do. The innate intelligence is profound. And I just am surprised by it more and more every day of what we see after people are sleeping in these shielded spaces.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And, you were able to come to my home too and help me create a shielded space for my own bedroom. So I'm very appreciative of that. But it was Klinghart who actually motivated and catalyzed my writing this book and kind of woke me up. I knew about the dangers of EMF for probably 20 years, maybe 15, somewhere in that range, where I realized it was an issue, but it was only an intellectual acknowledgement, and I didn't do anything practical to mitigate that, but kind of intellectually slapped me around a little bit and woke me up, and I started investigating more carefully, and it really was catalyzing my journey too. So we're both really grateful to him for pioneering this area, because it is such an important contribution, as we're going to explain in more careful details quite in a little bit. But why don't you continue with your how you achieve your training and your level of expertise, because it is quite extraordinary. As I said, I don't believe there's anyone out there that can give better targeted, customized device for individual shielding challenges.
Yeah, so once I realized this was a big issue, I started looking for people out there that were professionals, and there's many different organizations, and trying to find out what kind of training I wanted to do. And I didn't find anybody that really approached it from a medical standpoint or a holistic health standpoint. It was all more electrical engineering and from a more electrical building standpoint. And I really wanted to, I felt like I kind of had to forge my own path in that way. But then also there's one type of stressor that Dr. Klinghart really stressed, and that was geopathic energy coming up from the earth. And I couldn't find anybody in the United States that was teaching that and how to mitigate it. So I found a naturopathic clinic in Austria that I trained with, and they helped me understand that. And then I started selling some of their shielding products and decided that, after some third-party testing and about a year of working with them, that there's some less expensive and superior options for that. So all along the way, I've kind of been realizing that, the way that we need to do this and approach this is we have to, recreate that ancestral environment in the bedroom. And that just wasn't something that I found as being done anywhere in the United States, and to a certain extent, even in Germany and Europe and places like that. So, the kind of consensus would be like, okay, we'll just lower it as much as possible, and we'll do this, and then we'll take the readings, and if they're lower, then we're good. We've done our job, and there's not anything else you can do. But from a health practitioner standpoint or a medical standpoint, you're kind of trying to make the list of possible causes for the person's symptoms and their illness, and then you are trying to rule out this as a factor. And I didn't feel like, with the current recommendations at the time, about 5 or 6 years ago, that I could rule out EMF as a factor when there's still residual issues, resonances, and different types of EMF that are existing in that person's space. And people were coming to me and saying, look, I've hired 5 or 6 different professionals to come in here, and they haven't figured out what was wrong. I'm still feeling something. And I would go in there and I would say, well, this is still really high. We need to get that down even lower and to the standard. And then, eventually they do that. I work with them, and things, go to where they're supposed to be as far as the readings on the meters and everything. And they start to have improvements. And that's what I'm looking for. And I don't want to just abandon somebody after an assessment. My goal with myself and my team that I've trained is we're going to be the last EMF first, hopefully the first and the last EMF assessment that you'll ever need, because we follow through with the recommendations that we give people, and we help them, guide them through the entire process until they've got that optimized sleeping environment. And we'll talk more about the priorities later, but we've come up with a priority system on where you need to definitely shield the most to get the most bang for your buck. And then also, what to worry about and what not to worry about when it comes to your EMF exposures, and what you can do when you are exposed.
Okay, great. We'll get into that in a bit. Now, I think we should name an organization because it has some recognition. It's the building biologist who first started in Europe, and then I think it was Germany or Austria, and then developed a United States presence in the United States. So you are not certified by them, but I believe you took some of their training, or at least maybe you can share that and share how your approach differs from theirs, because they are the most well recognized and the ones that an individual would typically approach if they're seeking guidance in this area.
Yeah, so I highly respect the building biology organization, and it just didn't seem like the right fit for me in the way I wanted to approach things. I think they have helped many people over the years, and have a lot of research and just they're very, very knowledgeable about many aspects of this. But I kind of also wanted to be able to offer solutions for lighting and geopathic stress. And so that's where I steered away from going the building biology training route. I was aware of their courses. I knew that they were the most popular, but I've learned that sometimes the most popular thing isn't always the thing that attracts me the most to different types of trainings. If I was attracted to the most popular thing, I would have become a conventional medical doctor to help people with their health, and we know all the pitfalls with the modern medicine and everything. So I decided to do the more natural nutritional therapy route, and if I had a choice now, I would probably go more osteopathic, naturopathic, environmental medicine type of route if I was to become a doctor or something like that. But I feel like I'm really in my wheelhouse now. And so the training that I did from Austria, um, I feel like that kind of set me up to be able to help people in a different way. And then since then, I've just kind of, I kind of have this viewpoint that if I find something better or something that's more true, I have to change my mind, whether that's a product, an organization that I start with, or whatever. I just need to keep upgrading so that I can help people more. And that's my ultimate goal, is to help people with a high level of integrity and to be able to do the best for them and give them the best shot also of convincing any skeptics in their house to actually follow through with some of these solutions. Because the way I view it is, when I go into someone's house, I may be the only person that they're ever going to hire to test this EMF. And it's probably, if there's a skeptic in the house or somebody who doesn't believe in this or whatever, I can usually convince them. I have a very good track record. There's still not been one skeptic that I've left behind after an assessment, because it's a very experiential thing that we do. We put the meters in their hands. There's clicking, there's noises. You can hear it. You can see the numbers going up, and you can see them reduce when we use some of the solutions that we bring with us for demonstration purposes. But it's the one shot that we have to really get that family protected. And, I have 3 daughters and a baby on the way right now. So every single assessment I do, I act as if it's my own family, and I really do care about the people that we help. And that's why I do this, because I want to be able to make a difference for people. And I understand that this might be their one shot to get protected in this way. And it's so, so important, because, especially for the children, because it's 8 hours every single night where they could have this healing therapy where you're awakening these dormant healing responses, and you don't have to get them to eat their vegetables or take your Dr. Mercola children's multivitamin or do anything. All they have to do is go in their bedroom and sleep in that shielded space, and it's 8 hours of healing therapy every single night. And that's what I really want. I want to protect the children and the vulnerable in society, and to be able to do it in a way that's going to make the biggest impact.
Yeah, well, my deep congratulations to you, because you just described sort of the perfect storm of an individual who has taken the basics, and this is true for most people who go to medical school too. You learn a certain base of knowledge, but then it's your responsibility, once you have that knowledge, to go out into the real world and apply it and modify it and change it and continue to learn so that you can serve the people that you're treating. And you're doing that in a profound way, and in fact leading the effort in the trenches. So congratulations. So I think with that basic primer, I think we can start answering some of these questions, because as we answer the questions, we're going to go into specific details so people can really understand what's going on here. So along those lines, we compiled about 50 questions on our site. We allow people to ask their questions and put them together. And I thought they would serve as a really great platform for you to illustrate the principles you've learned. So the first question is, I'm planning on building a prefab house, but want to block EMFs. What materials can be used to make sure the house, or at least the top floor where the bedrooms will be, safe? So I think it's, it doesn't matter if the bedrooms are in the basement or in the first floor or the top floor. That is the most important room. So why don't you talk about the priorities here of, in your home, what needs to be addressed, and then you can get into specifics. But really, it's the bedroom that is the single most important area, because that's when, if you can create the shielded environment, then you're essentially replicating the way that their ancestors lived about 200 years ago. Because at least in 1889, we first started having electricity, and that's 130 years ago. So you have to go back, and even another 100 years before that, we had telegraph wires going up and static electricity being experimented on. So it wasn't literally until the 18th century, prior to the 18th century, that we really had an electrically neutral environment. So that's the goal and intention of your practices and your efforts, and remediation efforts, is to create that pre-18th century environment.
Yeah, it is. And so basically, with the recommendations that we give, the priority system is kind of from the perspective of when does your body need to be in the parasympathetic state, and that's your rest and digest state, versus the sympathetic state, your fight or flight response. And so there's 3 times really when your body is in main primary times when your body is supposed to be in a parasympathetic state. It's when you're sleeping, and when you're eating, and then when you're detoxing. And so those are the areas where I immediately look to in the house, especially, and start to prioritize. Okay, and then also with sleep, we're 8 hours sitting in the same location pretty much every night, you know. And if you travel, that's a whole different thing. But at home, you're sleeping in this spot, same location for 8 hours every night. So that alone means that whatever you're exposed to in the bedroom, you're being exposed to that for 8 hours. That's a third of your life, a third of your day. And so, and it's one of the most important times to be protected from any type of stressor, whether it's dirty air, pollutants, you know, mold, EMF, anything. You know, you have artificial light peeking in, that's disrupting your melatonin while you sleep. So when you sleep, your body goes into this deep restorative state. Your brain actually shrinks by about 40% with this lymphatic system, and it pumps out through the cerebral spinal fluid all the oxidative stressors that melatonin sweeps up. And, you know, because melatonin is a potent free radical scavenger. And so that pumps out the back of your spine and then into your circulatory system for your liver and your kidneys to kind of detox and take care of. And then your whole lymphatic system is also working at different times during the night as well. So nighttime is really our innate detoxification that happens. It's the body's chosen time to do all of this maintenance work, this detoxing and the cellular repair and everything. And so, you know, I think it's kind of ironic that so much of the work that we do in this health field is that we are constantly thinking about what we eat, what we're doing during the day, and then at night we just kind of sleep is very, you know, downplayed. And no, I know that, like, your listeners, you've interviewed many people who, like, sleep doctors and people who have gone over this in like great depth, and you guys may have more of an understanding of how important sleep is. But for me, I just kind of think of it for the average person, it's when the body is supposed to be restoring and recovering. And if we want to get healthier, we have to address sleep. There's no way around it. You have to. And so that's definitely number one priority for sure. And then where you eat, your body, in order to have all the digestive juices, the hydrochloric acid, the bile, the enzymes that your pancreas produces, all that stuff works through the vagus nerve, which is part of the parasympathetic activation of the nervous system. And so in order to actually digest your food, you have to be in a relaxed state. So that's another area where I tell people, okay, if you are in a high EMF environment while you're eating, you're not going to digest your food as well. You have more digestive discomfort, and you're not going to absorb all those, the nutrient-dense whole food that you're eating, the supplements that you're taking, and everything is going to be less, you know, they're going to have less quality absorption because of the stressor that your body's perceiving. It's going to prioritize dealing with that stressor rather than actually digesting that food and making that a priority. And so with this food digestion thing, what we recommend people to do is, okay, eat your food at your dinner table, and about an hour after, that's when your main digestion is happening. So after you eat, go into your shielded space, if you have it, or a low EMF environment, and just relax, read a book, just, you know, let your food digest. And we've seen some amazing results with just that. Just people that have digestive issues, just doing that has been, you know, amazing results with that. And then the very last thing that we prioritize is the detoxification. So for a long time, I was looking for, okay, what ways does the body detox? Obviously at night, that's one thing, but we've already covered that. But then sauna was another thing where you have the potential to be exposed to a really high level of EMF while you're supposed to be detoxing. And so that was something where I was really on the lookout for some options for that, some low or zero EMF options.
Yeah, it's not even potential. The sad reality is that most people are using the far infrared saunas, and almost every single one of them have high electric fields. So why don't you share your story? Because there's another Brian Richards of Sauna Space, who is really the only sauna manufacturer that you ever encountered in your desire to help consult with these companies and see if you can improve the environment they were selling to people for detoxification.
Yeah, so it was probably about 3 or 4 years ago now. I was going around to all these trade shows and brought my meters with me, my equipment. So maybe it was a little intimidating to some of these sauna manufacturers to have somebody coming up with all these meters that are clicking around and you can actually hear the little clicks and everything.
Yeah, and these meters aren't inexpensive. What you just showed was an NFA 1000 from Gigahertz Solution. That thing goes for about $3,000.
Yeah. I mean, I've got between, depending on what I'm doing on my EMF tours, I have between $12,000 to $20,000 worth of equipment that I bring with me to test people's homes, because that's what's really required to do it to the level that I really needs to be done. And so it's interesting though, because there's a lot of inexpensive meters that you can use to actually kind of use as screening tools for these things. But a lot of them do give you a false sense of security if you think, okay, I'm good. And I've had many people who are EMF experts where I go to their house and I test and I actually pick up something that they weren't aware of.
Surprise!
Because I'm picking, they're like, oh, wow, I didn't even know that was there. It's like, well, and that's where I try to be a little bit more humble about things too, is because I realize that I have equipment and there's probably things that I'm not detecting. And so when I make my recommendations, I make them as if, okay, there are definitely, even if I'm not detecting anything or very little, there's, my meters are my blind spot. Like anything that my meters aren't detecting above a certain frequency range, I don't know. There could be an exposure there. And so I have to just kind of keep that in mind. And once I get a meter that measures something else and I discover that, we start to measure it and
a real world example for that would be 5G, because that's typically operating at higher frequencies that they have meters that test for them, but the meters are $50,000 or $100,000. They're not really commercially viable at this point. So, but fortunately we don't have a lot of 5G now, but that is something that's definitely coming up and that's going to have to be integrated into the comprehensive analysis.
Yeah. And, I found a meter that I decided to go ahead and buy that measured up to 40 gigahertz
That's pretty good.
last year. And I tested in LA and Dallas and Austin, Texas, and where 5G was live. And I didn't detect many millimeter waves there. I detected a little bit in LA, but it was very splotchy, like laser pointed frequencies that were coming in that I was detecting. And I kind of came to the conclusion, and I already had thought this because of test reports from the telecom industry that I've seen that talk about millimeter waves, that, 5G, they're all saying that they're going to put millimeter waves, or maybe we're assuming in the the EMF community and people that are protesting 5G, we're assuming that it's going to be millimeter waves on every post. But really, all the plans I've seen and what I've tested, it's sub 6 gigahertz. It's going to be on every block, not the millimeter waves, because the millimeter waves are actually impractical. Those are only going to be in dense urban areas. And, I've had this opinion for probably 2 years, despite like all the other stuff that you read online and in groups and stuff. They're saying, oh, millimeter waves, this and that. I'm not as much concerned about those. I still am, but I'm more concerned about the increased saturation of existing 4G frequencies, because those towers are going to be going closer to people's homes, so that it's going to be a vast, much more exposure being closer. And those frequencies actually penetrate deeper and more easily through solid objects than those millimeter waves do.
Well, as long as we're on the topic, why don't we skip to another question that's, I'm not sure if we have time to get to it, but it was about SpaceX. Has a Starlink program, which has, I think, permission right now for 12,000 to launch 12,000 satellites. And they submitted a petition for another 30,000 for a total of 42,000 satellites. They've already have, I think, 4 launches, just the last one being just a few days ago. Each time they launch, they put up 60 satellites, and they're scheduled to go at least twice a month or so. And by the end of this year, they're projected to offer broadband within the United States. And I believe that's 5G. But do you have any special insights on the type of frequencies they're going to be using?
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what they've allotted to that program, but if it is if it is millimeter waves, then they might be self-directed. I've heard of the devices actually will kind of ping and then the satellite will send it down. I don't know that they're going to be blanketing everything. It could be that way, but I don't have enough knowledge right now to have a solid opinion on that, other than we do need a shield from that if it's going to be blasting
There's no
us.
question. I mean, the writing is on the wall. We have a lot of exposure now, but the exposure is only going to increase quite dramatically once the Starlink programs gets activated. So, and it's not like it's speculative. They've already launched nearly 200 satellites, and they have permission for 42, or will have permission for 42,000. So 42,000 satellites circling the globe, which is probably going to increase at least by a factor of 10 and maybe even 100-fold. It's what we already have right now.
Yeah, and we need to, we always, I've learned over the years that no matter what you read online, you have to be able to measure it before you can start really conjecturing on how bad it is, or even if it's not something to worry about, because, sometimes the things that they tell you or to worry about are you don't have to worry about, and then the opposite is true as well. Like, oh, this is not going to be an issue, but it ends up being the worst thing ever. The 600 megahertz from T-Mobile, that penetrates deeper and goes further than any of the 5G networks. And so that's something that's going to be blanketing everybody, but not as many people are concerned about that as they are about the millimeter waves. And I'm actually quite a bit concerned about this 600 megahertz because I've seen it and I've tested it in people's homes.
Yeah, and what is that, a 2G frequency or 3G typically, or?
Well, they're considering it a 5G frequency because it's a new frequency band that's opened up for the use in T-Mobile's 5G network. But typically, 900 to 2,000 megahertz is what the cell phone companies have been using. So it's actually a lower frequency than that.
I was not aware of that.
Yeah, but it penetrates deeper and goes much further. That's why you can even look up on your favorite video search online, and you can look up T-Mobile commercial, and it'll be like, yeah, we go, you can be out in the middle of nowhere and you're going to get signal. And like, it's a really good thing. You'd be like, no, I want to be out in the middle of nowhere so I don't have any signal and I'm not exposed to this stuff, So it's unfortunate that it's kind of come to that, but it's all the more reason why we really need to pay attention to this, especially in our own homes, of at least being free of that while we're at home.
And the cordless phones, which for the most part, I believe we abandon for typically because of the widespread use of cell phones. There's really limited need in most people's minds for a cordless phone, but the cordless phones were at 900 megahertz, and those cause a lot of problems, more dangerous than cell phones, I believe.
Yeah. So what I've found with our measurements is the frequencies that are the most interactive on the human body, on the skin, actually, and I can't say anything about the higher frequencies interacting with organs, but every single thing that's conductive has a certain resonance where it's going to tune into that or make your body resonate. Your skin is a certain resonance where anything from the FM radio station up through about 900 megahertz resonates with the human body and the skin and the conductivity that's on the skin. And the way you can measure that is with a meter that actually measures the body as an antenna. And so, like, I'm in my shielded house, so I'm pretty protected here, but I've got this window up here that's doesn't have my shielding fabric on it right now. So you can kind of hear the frequencies a little bit with this. Now, if I put the body antenna in and I touch the top of this, you can see how my body actually acts as an antenna here. So it makes the reception stronger because I have more surface area on my entire body than what the little antennas that measure the air can pick up. And so, I'm being exposed from all different directions. Actually, in my house, I'm only being exposed from this direction over here. But when I use my body as an antenna, you can see the micro voltage that it creates, and it comes onto the body. And so we kind of put our shielding in place with that in mind, thinking about the body as an antenna.
Yeah, and it's a far more sensitive test and measure of your exposure. So when you're just using a simple meter, you're going to get essentially a false sense of security in many cases, and it's not going to be as sensitive as using the body as an antenna. And the meter could do that. Yeah.
Yep. Exactly.
All right. So maybe we can continue with answering that one question. So what's the strategy? So you clearly made it obvious that you have to address the bedroom. So maybe you can continue with addressing the bedroom, on a pragmatic perspective, what needs to be done.
Yeah, well, there's first of all, there's 6 different stressors that we test for when we go into a house. There's the wireless frequencies that everybody's really aware of. There's the electric fields from voltage and wiring in the walls, things that you plug in. There's magnetic fields that can occur from wiring errors, motors, things that are running in the house. Outside power lines and transformers can penetrate into the house depending on the distance from them and how much current's flowing through them at any given time during the day. And then there's dirty electricity, which is thousands of harmonic frequencies that are riding on your electrical line that are very noxious and disruptive to the nervous system and hormones, actually. And then there's the geopathic stress that comes up from the earth, and that we test with some ancient methods of dowsing and also just common sense, looking at the landscape of the property and everything. And then the 6th thing is artificial light. So we test for the color spectrum. We want to match the outside light environment with the indoor environment. And then we also test for the flicker of the lights, because lights are operating on this 60 hertz pulse signal, and they're turning on and off 120 times per second. And even though our brain cannot perceive that happening all the time, our eyes are constantly adjusting to this. And so it can be very straining on the eyes, which the eyes are connected to the hypothalamus and pituitary right into the brain. And then that goes, that has an effect on your adrenal glands, actually, the HPA axis. And so there's actually this functional test that we learned in my training with the NTA called the pupillary reflex test. And it's a test for the adrenal glands. And so you can actually just take a little flashlight, and you can do this at home by yourself in a dark bathroom. You just put the flashlight over your pupil, and you can see if your pupil constricts and how long it holds that constriction. If it starts to pulsate or it can't hold a constriction with that light in your eyes, it's a sign of adrenal stress. And so we're starting to have people test this before and after shielding and seeing some really amazing results within a short period of time. And it just shows that, your adrenals are actually restoring at night like that. So, but yeah, there's 6 different types of stressors. Go ahead.
So with the light and the flicker, I just want to mention that it's not all lights. It's basically digital lights with LEDs and fluorescence. So if you have any incandescent, which admittedly is somewhat rare, that's not going to flicker.
Right. Yeah. Actually, it flickers a lot less. It's still running on the 60 hertz.
Okay.
But what we found is the lower wattage incandescent will flicker more because it doesn't get as hot. So it doesn't, it cools down much faster when it's a lower wattage. And the unfortunate thing is that many of the fixtures we have now only go up to maybe 75 watts max. And we used to have them go up to 150, 200 watts, the fixtures. And so we recommend 100, 150 watt bulbs, ideally, to reduce that flicker enough where we're not seeing as much of a physiological effect on people's bodies. And the nice thing about the incandescents is they also provide a more full spectrum. So you're getting that near infrared therapy indoors like you would outdoors, a little more than you would normally if you have like LEDs and things like that. And then there's also some specific types of LED bulbs that do not flicker that we recommend to people. And that's just on a case-by-case basis. We have to test each kind and see. But you can, I could do a little demonstration here to kind of show the flicker effect of the bulbs. So right here, this is just testing the natural sunlight that's coming in through my window. And then I've got hooked up here a little LED bulb. I'm just going to...
Your brain doesn't like that.
No.
Nervous system does not like
that. In fact, I just kind of went like this when I turned that on. So you can see that's the buzzing sound you hear is the 60 hertz going back and forth. And so when you and the thing about this bulb in particular is that it also has a high frequency response too. So I'll switch this to measuring radio frequencies.
Whoa.
And that's actually a different setting. It's measuring high frequency.
Is that a smart LED? A smart bulb?
No. It's a regular LED bulb that I found that actually I took it from a client that we were testing their house. I was like, I need this bulb to show people that some bulbs actually will emit RF, even though they're not a smart bulb.
Yeah.
So this LED had that phenomena happening. And then we've also found even fans, because of arcing that happens, some air purifiers, if they don't have metal casing, they will be emitting radio frequencies, even if there's no Bluetooth, no Wi-Fi on it, just because the fan's spinning inside of there. And so people that are really electrosensitive, that's how we find out some of these stressors in their bedroom. Their fan, their air purifier, they're running all night long so they get clean air, but it's got this plastic casing on it, and it's got a fan blowing all the time, and so it's actually emitting a radio frequency like a certain distance out from the air purifier. And they're like, every time I'm in my bedroom, I just can't sleep. I'm turning around and everything. And finally, I found a meter that would actually measure this, and so I could tell them, well, look, you actually have this radio frequency source in here. I thought I got rid of all my Wi-Fi. Well, it's not just Wi-Fi that emits radio frequencies. It's also, there can be wiring issues in the home. There can be spinning fans or arcing, appliances that cause this too. So we're really trying to pin down and nail everything that's a potential stressor in the bedroom. And eventually we'll get to answer this person's question here, but
because we only have 50 more questions, and it's a half hour. We haven't even finished question one. I don't know how far we're going to get, but you did teach me the ultimate light bulb would be a 250 watt near infrared bulb. Actually infrared bulb, because it's significant medium far infrared too. But from Saunas space, they're called the Photon, which is about $350 that you can use as a nightlight. And actually, it's so good. I travel with this bulb every time I go to a hotel. I travel with it, and that's the light I use before I go to bed. It's the only light I have on in the hotel.
Yeah, and that's the company that I found that would actually work with me, and we worked to fully shield all their products from electric fields. They already were very low in magnetic fields, and then we also have this Faraday sauna where we have this shielding fabric in the enclosed, like for the whole sauna enclosure, so you're fully protected from most drastic reduction in the wireless frequencies that you're exposed to. It's basically like having a portable shielded room. And so that's allows your body to get into a deeper parasympathetic response, deeper detox, and seen some amazing results for people that are electrosensitive using these saunas, because many saunas they cannot tolerate because the EMF or the off-gassing or whatever. Everything with this sauna is done, the way that I would want to if I was to design a sauna now, because Brian Richards was kind enough to, listen to me and the concerns, and he wanted to improve his company. So he's continually doing that. And I appreciate that there's more and more companies that are kind of starting to get this idea. And that's part of what I'm starting to do now is, especially these companies in the health and wellness industry, they're approaching me and saying, I want to EMF proof my product now. How can we do that? So, and I look forward to the day when I'm like, I don't have to do this anymore because now it's standard.
Yeah. We're moving there, and you're helping catalyze that movement. So let's continue with the bedroom. So, you're looking at the light and the 6 types of fields, which are really important. We'll probably go into that because, I mean, we could probably spend the rest of the time just talking about this because measuring the fields are huge. The magnetic, and well, just continue with their process, because what's the step after you've assessed those 6 different fields with your meters?
Yes. So we'll come into the house, and it usually takes about 3 to 4 hours for me or my team to do the full assessment of the house. And it depends on the size of the house, number of bedrooms you want checked. We really focus in on the bedrooms as the number one priority, and we build a full protocol for the house, just like we would for a human being. And we leave the person with that protocol and then help them, guide them through the whole process. So we're looking at electric fields. There's, and during the assessment, we find things that we can just unplug or switch out or move away from the bed or different areas and say, okay, we didn't even know this was emitting Wi-Fi or Bluetooth, but now we do know. So a lot of the assessment is hunting down Wi-Fi sources, telling people how to, don't leave your printer plugged in and turned on because it's always emitting Wi-Fi, and you only use your printer, once a week? So, there's some really easy things like that. And then Apple TVs, all the different types of Wi-Fi smart TVs, even remotes from the Roku, sometimes will have Wi-Fi built into them that are constantly emitting. So there's all kinds of things that we test for. And basically, it's kind of like we're counter surveillance people. If there is a bug in your house, we're going to find it. And we're testing and sweeping the entire house for all these different frequencies, and then the wireless frequencies, and then the electric fields. We want your body to be at on our equipment below 30 millivolts, because our equipment is actually so sensitive it'll pick up even static electricity as alternating current. So on a regular multimeter,
and just so that sounds confusing, but essentially you actually have to place the probe on your skin, and if you move the probe, you're creating static electricity, which will be read as current, and it's not. It's just a false negative reading.
Right.
False positive.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll, on a regular multimeter, we're looking for 10 millivolts, and this voltage just comes from the wiring in your walls. There's no wiring issues, no wiring error necessarily because of the voltage. It's just how homes are built today, not with health in mind. And so let me just give another tangent. So 30 millivolts, below 30. Actually, my bedroom now is down to, I haven't told you yet, since we did the floor, it was 0.0 now. Zero millivolts. So, but when you first came to my house a few years ago and you measured the far infrared sauna I was using, it was 60,000 millivolts, 60,000. Yeah, it was, and at that point, that was the highest I'd ever tested. And there was a little bit of shame in your face that I saw. Like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this.
It was more than a little bit.
Yeah. But, 65 or 60,000 millivolts, yeah, it's a lot. That's 60 volts, Yeah. So even an electrician would look at that number and think that's way too high.
And that sauna was advertised as low EMF, by the way, folks. Low EMF.
Yeah. So
which is typical. That's what they do. They say it's low EMF, and they just don't. They just never did the testing. So in some ways, they're lying by omission because they never did the full testing. It's easy to measure.
Yeah. Well, honestly, I think a lot of them just, they hire an expert to test their sauna, and the expert doesn't test all the different types of electromagnetic frequencies and fields. So they're usually talking about magnetic fields being lower. But even the magnetic fields on many of these saunas that are, they're way lower than the United States government standards. But for my standards, I want the body to be in a parasympathetic state when you're in your sauna. So it has to be even lower than that. We're looking at 0.3 milligauss or less in the sauna. That's the goal. Mm-hmm. If you can't get that wherever your body is, then it's not good enough in my standpoint. So there's very few companies that are even looking at that and trying to get that low. They think 1 milligauss is really, really good. And it's better than 30 or 50 that are in some of the really high EMF ones, but it's still, I still want, we want the best. If we're going to have a product that's advertised as being healthy and you're supposed to use it to boost your health, go all out, do it the right way,
Yeah. So there are different ways to lower these electric fields. If you live in a commercial building, it's not as much of an issue, like a condo or hotel, because usually by code, most municipalities require the electrical wiring to be in a physical metal conduit, which essentially eliminates the electric fields and they're behind the walls. But if you're in a residential, there's very few residential communities that have that in code. I mean, you could build a house and put it in conduit. No, there's no law against it. It's actually safer, but very few people do it because of the cost. So then you could turn off the electricity. So talk about that, and talk also about turning it off doesn't solve the problem like it did in my house. Yes, it lowers it, but it was still electric current in there that actually came in through the floor.
Yeah. So early on, I was, testing breakers in people's houses, and so that they could shut off some power in their bedrooms. Mm-hmm. And that's a really easy and inexpensive solution. But then I realized, there's kind of a little bit of a liability with that, having people go to their breaker box and flip them on and off all the time. And so there's some products out there where you can actually press a button and turn them off. That works good for that. But ultimately, in my experience, everybody needs the RF shielding, the wireless protection. And our solution for that is to either have a canopy over the bed that's a conductive fabric that you can ground so that the electric fields can't get in. And then you have to have something on the floor as well. Or the ultimate solution is really to paint the bedroom with this special shielding paint, and then it's grounded as well. And so even if the breakers are on, the power is on, you are not getting electric fields coming in. And then we have to do the floor as well.
Well, let me just refine that, because if you have an electric cord that's not grounded into the wall, then the electric field will come in. So it's not coming out until you plug something in, plug an unshielded cord into the wall.
Right. Yeah. So when you have the paint on, as long as you don't have anything plugged in, you've got protection from the electricity that's behind the walls. As soon as you plug something in that doesn't have a shielded cord, it does bring that voltage in, and it will raise up your body voltage. So, but in a typical scenario, a person's in their bedroom, their millivoltage could be anywhere from 500 millivolts at the lowest, probably the lowest I've seen in a typical house, up to 10,000, 15,000 millivolts on their body all night long while you're sleeping. You've got this contraction of your muscles happening. You just think about the way that electricity impacts the body. How do we restart a heart? We pump voltage into it. It makes your heart muscle contract. The little electrodes that you can put on your muscles to make involuntary muscle contraction happen, it causes, calcium causes the muscle to contract. Magnesium helps it to relax. And I think, there's some studies that actually show this too, but I think that one of the reasons that we're so magnesium deficient in our modern culture is because we've got this constant exposure to this alternating current that's got these micro contractions happening all night long, all day long in some instances with our muscles, and it's depleting us of our magnesium, which is trying to relax our muscles. So we've got this constant tension that's going on all the time. And if you have that at night while you're sleeping, your body can never really get into that full parasympathetic state so that you can actually do the healing and restoration that you need, because your body is so tensed up. Your cortisol is going up, your melatonin's going down, and you're not getting that restorative detoxification of the brain and all the lymphatics detoxing optimally. You'll get a little bit, and a lot of people will be like, oh, I sleep great. Sleeping great is not a sign necessarily that your body is actually restoring itself. It's just a sign that, people that have sleep apnea say they sleep great, but they have this oxygen issue and airway issue. And so, there's all kinds of factors that go into this. And I've had many people that track it with their Oura ring, before and after shielding. And I just get really, really excited about the new different ways that we can track the before and after effect of all these things with the shielding that we do, because it's kind of a new thing and not many people are tracking it from this health perspective.
Yeah, so let me share my personal experience because my first go around at shielding my bedroom, I painted the walls, and at least most of the walls. I have a closet that goes off that I decided not to because had a built-in closet and it would just been a mess to take all the built-in closet out and apart. And then I had built-in cabinetry that one set of them on the upper and lower that I didn't paint behind either. So, and I didn't do the floor because that would involve tearing up the floor and replacing it, putting shielding in, and then putting a new floor in. So then you sent me a video just showing the difference between not shielding the floor and shielding the floor. And this is on ground level. This is not a second floor. This is ground level concrete slab. And it was massive. It was massive once you did that. So I made the commitment and made the investment and hired the contractor to come in and purchase the materials. And he did it, and pulled out the wall, all the cabinets, repainted them, repainted it, and pulled up the floor and put the shielding material on, put the new floor on, and that's when I was able to get the electrical fields down to 0 millivolts. I mean, under 5 for sure. Maybe it goes to 2 or 3. But it's pretty low. It's definitely under 30. So my sleep, as per Aura, my deep sleep, as most individuals as they age tend to be. And we made, this is what the observation is, that deep sleep tends to disappear as you get older. But this may be an artifact because for the last of simple exposure to electrical fields, because the last 200 years or 230 we've been exposed to them, and that's probably what happens to the individual as he ages. That your ability to tolerate this exposure decreases, and it messes up your deep sleep. But I mean, the first night I did it, I was traveling, so I think I went to bed at 3 or 4 o'clock, which is normally when I'm getting up. But I slept for 5 hours. 2 hours was deep sleep, and an hour was REM. So like 60% of the sleep was either deep or REM, and which is pretty crazy good. And now as I'm getting over an hour every night of deep sleep, or before many nights it would just get just a few minutes.
Yeah. So it's incredible, and there's others that have the Aura Ring, and it's such a valuable tool to be able to track your sleep that way. And it's there probably the coolest story that I have that's more recent is a colleague of mine that did some shielding, and she had the first 2 nights that she was in her shielded room, she really felt like her heart was racing, her temperature was going up. She was having all these hyperthyroid symptoms, and she got to thinking, why am I having hyperthyroid symptoms? I'm actually, I'm supposed to be hypothyroid. And then she realized she was still taking her thyroid glandular. So she got rid of that, and then she slept better than she had in years. And she'd been on that thyroid glandular for what I think she told me the better part of a year. And she didn't need it anymore. After one night in a shielded room, she didn't need that anymore. Her dosage completely changed. So, but it makes sense when you think about the way the thyroid gland works. It's upregulating your metabolism to deal with some kind of stressor or something.
Yeah.
And so when you don't have that stressor anymore, you don't need that upregulation, and any upregulation that you have artificially inputting like your thyroid medication or your thyroid glandular, it's just too much. You don't need that anymore. You don't need that kind of support.
I agree. So let's get down to the practicalities. You've broadly described the process. Can you give a general range of the cost to shield a room like you described? And then we'll discuss some less expensive options.
Yeah. So generally, when we do these assessments, we come in for 3 to 4 hours, and then we have I have a whole team of people that, I have an assistant that kind of helps to guide our customers through the process as well. But we look over everything together. So even if I have another person on my team do the assessment, my eyes are still looking at every single assessment that comes through Shielded Healing. And we talk about if the recommendations are good.
Shieldedhealing.com is the name of your company and website.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. So we look through everything as a team and make sure that the protocol is what it should be. And it represents usually about 10 hours of work for each assessment to make sure the protocol is right, including the assessment itself. And then we actually have a free retest. So when we come back in the area, after the solutions are in place, we retest everything for free. So that whole process starts off at about $1,000 for like a studio apartment, and then we had $100 per bedroom and per 1,000 square
Well,
foot.
that's the cost for the assessment. I was curious as
Yeah.
the cost for the remediation, which you don't do. You you give it up to them, and usually it's in consultation with the local contractor. So you don't do remediation or shielding. They have to do that themselves, right?
Right. Yeah. We guide their contractors through the process, or some people want to do it themselves to save some money. So, but we guide people through the entire process themselves. Now, just for the materials, we're talking about for a typical 12 by 12 bedroom, it kind of depends on the windows too, because you have to put shielding material over the windows as well. And so if you have huge windows, it's going to cost more. But for a typical room, just for the painting and the grounding and the fleece and everything, you're looking at about $1,000 to $1,500, depending on your window situation. And you just think about that in terms of
that's just material cost. That's not
just material cost, and then the painting and everything is added on to that. And it's the thing I tell people is this is a permanent solution. Something that you're going to be doing every night. You don't have to even think about it. A lot of people can't get in their sauna every day. They can't do their hyperbaric oxygen therapy every day because it takes time. But everybody has to sleep. So every night you're going to get that 8 hours of therapy that you don't even really have to think about. And so it's a no-brainer for that reason, and for kids who you don't have to convince.
I think for many people, well, maybe not many, but certainly a significant number, it's going to be even over $10,000 if you have a big bedroom. There's just that's just the cost with the assessment, the materials, the labor, ripping up the floor, putting a new floor down. I mean, just the material cost for mine was probably $3,000 or $4,000 just for materials. So that's costly, and it's a lot. Not many people won't be able to afford that, but they're still going to need a solution. And and what I put together. With your help, your incredible help, was an EMF shielded sleeping tent, which is sort of the really least expensive approach that you can use. Now, there are existing alternative approaches like canopies, EMF shielding canopies that you can put over your bed. But the mistake that most people make, they live on the first floor, have a concrete slab, and they think they don't need a base for that, but that's just incorrect. So those canopies go for probably, you're looking at $2,000, especially if you do the floor. And then, I don't know, what's your experience that people have of, because, do they shield really well, or are there leaks in there where they gets in and are able to get the electrical field levels really low?
Well, what I found when I first started looking at all the products is that, and I've seen, I've been aware of EMF for probably, 10 to 12 years, like basically when I first started to get into the health related field as a practitioner. And I realized after I started to really get into the EMF side of things that the same solutions that were there 10 or 15 years ago are still there today, and there wasn't any real upgrades. Whereas our technology has been upgraded more and more every single year. Like every 2 years, every year, obsolete. Basically your phone is obsolete.
Yeah.
And so like the shielding is important to upgrade as well. So I'm always on the lookout for new shielding materials, and we've come across this, I had everything that was existing that was the highest end quality products that's hypoallergenic, third-party tested, sometime about 1.5 years ago. And then we sourced our own shielding fabric that's a conductive cotton material. And the issue with a lot of the materials that were on the market is they couldn't be grounded, or if they could be grounded, they were easily flaking off, metallic particles, which you don't want. And so we sourced something that could, that doesn't do that. And then it also can be grounded, and it's got a luxurious feel to it. And it's hypoallergenic and makes all the marks that I want as a holistic health practitioner. So we sourced that, and now we've been using that with people. And with that, we can get the levels of the electric fields down to where we like to see them.
But the conventional, traditional, I think grayish type silver fabric that's used, quite costly, by the way. That's why these things cost $1,000 or $2,000 for your canopies, but those don't work as well. At least when you've measured them, you're not getting electric fields down.
Well, there's some that work really, really well, but we had complaints with the smell, the discoloration that happens with the silver. It kind of oxidizes and doesn't look pretty. You know, some people want something beautiful in their bedroom. They don't want to have to feel like there's some weirdo. So like putting aluminum foil up everywhere, which you know, there's a little bit of an issue with putting foil up in hard metals, because they actually do reflect more instead of absorbing more like a paint would. But the materials that we're using for the fabric, it's a silver. Silver is kind of more of a soft metal, and so it has a little bit more absorbative quality. But you really want the canopy to be a certain size in order to you know, make it more comfortable for a person who wants it around their whole bed. You know, so we took a lot of that stuff into account when we were sourcing the material, and we found something that we like. And there's other materials I like too that are out there. But you know, the idea that we you know, every person needs to have something that they can afford to put in their bedroom. And I really think that this travel canopy, this travel tent that your team has been working on is really a good option for many people who like, I just need something right away, right now. Or if you're traveling, I know I'm going to have my whole team be using those on the road as well. And you know, I've obviously tested it extensively, and it is going to be like the best thing out there as far as a personal EMF protection travel device for sure.
Yeah, we hope that the tent will retail for under $500 is our hope. I'm not sure what the final costs are, but we've had a lot of revisions thanks to you, because you know, and there are other tents that go over beds, you know, that you can be used that are advertised even on eBay, but they have zippers. And the zipper is the problem point, because that's where the leaks come in. And we had to come up with some innovative solution, which still needs a little revision. But you've got to put shielding on either side of the zipper. Otherwise, it's going to leak right through the zipper.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, you know, this whole shielding thing, like it's, you know, you could, like, there's many videos online where you can try to do it yourself, but it is very complicated. We don't know unless we test a space how we're going to actually implement the shielding, because we need to know where the frequencies are coming from, what frequencies they are. And then when we come back and retest, we make some minor revisions or suggestions on how we can orient things in the room to make it so the bedroom's optimal. And you just have to do that. You know, with a product, you can rule all that out because you have control over the whole enclosure. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I did when I was consulting with Sauna Space and with you guys is, you know, we have control over the enclosure, so we can rule out any of the leakage points if we want to. And that's very, very important. And you have to have the right equipment to be able to test it and the know-how of how to do it. And I've come up with some pretty innovative ways to be able to test that when on the go and everything. And it's, you know, it's something where it does require quite a bit of knowledge to be able to do it the right way.
You can probably address this now. And you use a lot of meters. You mentioned you have like $20,000 of equipment that you bring with you or more on a job site. But the ultimate meter, especially with many of your clients who are EMF hypersensitive, is the human body, you know, a sensitized human body. I mean, they are better than any meter, right? So why don't you talk about that and how that aspect of human biology has really been a mentor for you?
Oh, yeah. So some of the people, you know, the people that I learned the most from are the people that are really sensitive to these frequencies. And for a while, you know, I would be going to people's houses who tell me, hey, I'm electrosensitive or I suffer from microwave sickness. And I would test their house with my basic equipment in the beginning and be like, you know what, I'm not getting anything. I believe you, but I need to figure this out, you know? And so I'd ask, can I borrow this thing that's bothering you and run some more tests on it? And then I would do that. And then I eventually find equipment that's picking something up it's unique to that product that they were using. And I can go back to them and say, okay, look, you're not crazy. This was emitting this type of frequency. And and I think this is why you're reacting to it. And then I try to figure out, sometimes I'll figure out a way to fix it. Sometimes you can't fix it, just depends. And then they're like, yeah, it's a lot better now, or no, it's still emitting something, or I'm still detecting something. But a lot of times you can't pick these things up until you're in an EMF-free environment, because you have so much noise. There's so much of a noise floor that you just won't pick it up on traditional equipment, or even equipment that's traditionally used for building biology. You have to get some different, you have to get more creative and come up with different ways to test these things.
Thanks so much for watching. Remember, hit the like and subscribe button so you can get more videos that can help you and your family take control of your health.